property prices doubling every 10 years. Is this something that you've been led to believe? I'm here to tell you today and break you some bad news that you have been unfortunately lied to. Is a little bit strong and a little bit harsh, but most definitely probably misled. And the people that's probably misleading you on this is the property gurus trying to sell you some courses. By the way, I've got nothing against people selling courses. I sell courses myself. I've got one for sale at the moment if you're interested, but I will not sell a course off the back of leading people with information or selling dreams. Don't get me wrong. I believe most people that said giving you this information are doing it not on purpose most of the time, but they're just not, it's not informed enough to give you this information, should I say. So listen, if you're watching on YouTube, do me a massive favor, hit that subscribe button, share this out to people. It really does help the channel. If you're watching on Instagram, if you're not on Instagram, go on YouTube, vice versa. If you're on Instagram, jump across to YouTube. Please give us some love and some following. Just hit 70,000 followers on Instagram, so massive thank you for my Instagram followers on there. But listen, property's doubling every 10 years. I'm here to explain to you with some facts why I believe that's not going to continue. It is an opinion, it's an educated opinion, not that I'm very educated. I left school with zero education, so not that I am very educated, but it is an educated opinion. This opinion is not based on my sentiment and not based on just really, I think, misleading data. So the data says properties double every 10 years. That data is like one big part of they missed out from this. And I don't know, I hear some people saying this is from hundreds of years of data, but there was a period from 1945 up to 2015 where property prices declined for 50 years straight. They lost, I don't know the exact statistics, but they lost more than double of their value on a 50-year period. And guess what, when and how that happened? That happened when we had price per earnings ratios that was wide. So what I mean by price per earnings ratios is the price that people earn in comparison to the price they have to pay for the property. At the moment, the average price, and don't get me wrong, there's averages and there's macro and microeconomics that go on everywhere. So even in London, there's macro and microeconomics going on everywhere. But the average price comparison to the average income at the moment is 9 times multiplier of your average income. I've just done a video on this, so I'll show you all the charts. It'll be released next Wednesday on my YouTube channel. So I'll show you all the charts and a bit more in depth on this if you want to see the data that goes with this. But basically, the last time we was a 9 times multiplier is when we was in that 50-year decline. And last time, the way they corrected that and got out of that multiplier is by building a lot. So they started building over 300,000 properties per year. Plus, they reduced the size of the properties they was building so they could build more properties. Plus, wages massively climbed. But when you look at this relevantly, like it's only so long something can keep on compounding and compounding. Back then, the wages, I don't know, I'm just guessing here, wages were probably like £10 a month. So doubling a £10 a month wage, there'll be a point where it get like, it's like a business. When you grow a business, at the start, you can get some rapid growth. And each year you might have 10, 20, 30 or 40 or even 50% growth. But over the years, that continued growth starts compounding downwards and it's harder to achieve that continued growth. And it's the same line with properties doubling. So there's a few facts that goes into this and into my educated opinion, because it is my opinion. And so I don't think anybody's misleading you on purpose. But if you look from 1945 to 1915, they reduced like massively. Go and look at the data, they reduced massively. And then from 1915 up until around 1945, obviously we had world wars and stuff like that. And as we come out of 1945, this is where people were getting the data from. It doubled roughly every 10 years. But there's a few things that happened massively different in that period from 1945 to today. The massive difference is the liquidity and lending in the markets is different than it's ever been in history. You've got the invention of computers, global markets, where obviously there was a global market before, but if you want to do global business, you had to send a letter to somebody. You had to send it via horse, via a boat, which might take 4 months to get a reply from that letter. There was no phones, there was no internet, there was no technology. The world is much more shrinked. Also, with the invention of technology and cameras and TV and radio, marketing went on mass hyperspeed. And America took the world leading superpower status in, as we come out, it was the Bretton's. Somebody give me the name of it. It was the Bretton Woods, I think, meeting in 1945 or 1946. Don't quote me on the name or the time. But had a meeting where all these leading powers come together and they said, right, okay, we're going to take the reserve currency from England, which was the pound previous to that for about 200 years previous to that, and we're going to be the new lead world currency, reserve currency, and basically the world leading superpower. So America took England's place with that. And then after that, it was right at the time when we got TV and ads and the American dream, and there was you literally, if somebody in baby boomers after the war, all they had to do is just be in the markets and they would be super wealthy today, either from their property or just buying average stocks. Property and average stocks have never performed the same as they had. There was a golden generation. And it's already showing signs that it's not doing this now again and repeating this. But let me rewind back. So many people say property prices double every 10 years. So from 1945 up until date, kind of, but kind of not as well, because each area's got a macro and microeconomics. I thank the anxious investor for this as well. He gave me a bit of inspiration to do this live video today. But when you look at the macro and microeconomics of this, basically, mainly they say London is a driver. So again, if you watch my video, it's coming out next Wednesday, you'll see the charts of London in comparison to the north and all the other regions in the UK. All the way up until 1990, London has always been the leading city of the UK. I believe London always will be the leading city, just because I believe it's not going to double in price anymore. I don't think there's going to be moderate capital growth, by the way, to get that out there. Everybody misunderstands. I was in a clubhouse room yesterday and somebody was saying London's always London. So I'm not saying London's going to fall off a cliff. I'm not saying London's never going to be overtaken as the main city of the UK. I don't believe that for 1 minute myself. Again, it's only an opinion, but I don't believe that. But what I'm saying is, if you look at the difference between London and all the other regions previously, after we come out of World War I, all the way up to the 1990s, it was pretty even, London just in front. And then in the 1990s, London took off. And this is the reason behind that. So if you look pre-World War I and II, UK was the world leading industrial power. We was the industrial revolutionary leaders. The steam engine, the spinning wheel to create textiles and clothes, the coal, the mining, the steel. We had all the industry and all the inventions in the UK. And then we lost that. So then wealth distribution. So when you go to the north, you look at the Victorian buildings that are built from the industrial revolutionary times. They are absolutely stunning and beautiful. You can see the wealth that was in the area. I've done another video on my YouTube, the biggest wealth transfer in property. Go and look out for that, because I go into detail with statistics and I'll show you the charts on it, because obviously you can't show you these now, this is alive. But back then, the wealth distribution was even all the way up until the world wars, because as I said, there was steel, coal, mining, steam engines was the main power at that time that was powering everything. So again, it was coal, fueling that. And I remember this as a kid. I remember when Margaret Thatcher shut down the coal mines in the north and the steel mines got shut down in the north, and it all left us. The textiles left the northwest because it went to India. Even though we invented that first spinning wheel, once other countries caught on. If you look at Ray Daddio's how the economic cycles work, he says countries innovate and other countries look at their innovation, then produce their innovation at a cheaper level, because we grew so much as industrial revolutionary leaders. Our lifestyles increased, the labour and the people's salaries all increased as well. And then other countries get your technology and can produce it at a lower input from what you're doing. So then it went, all the textiles went to places like third world countries, Taiwan, China, India, to be produced, because then they had our technology to produce it en masse, so we didn't have the advantage of that. So then all the jobs in the northwest went from textiles, all the jobs in the northeast went from mining, coal mines, steel. So then it became London a central hub. But back in the 1980s, 1990s, when we see the wealth gap divide in property prices in the UK, because before they was, look at the whole of history, there's never ever been this wide ever once in history between London and the north. It's always been London slightly in front, but not as wide as it is now. When that widened, it's because we lost all our industry. The wealth distribution then come to London, a central hub for business. And it's because London encouraged loads of foreign investment into London. And I remember watching a documentary about this about what must have been about 6 or 7 years ago, saying London, like power cities of the world. And they said, look, if you go to Dubai, the Arabs run Dubai. You go to New York, New Yorkers run Dubai, run New York. Sorry. If you go to Russia and what's the centre of Russia? Somebody put in the comments for me. But if you go to Russia, Russians run that. But London, what it done is it become a multicultural hub where it attracted Russians, Chinese, Middle Easterns all into London. It became the most powerful city. It's not at the moment. It was the most powerful cities probably in the late 90s all the way through the early 2000s in the world, because it just attracted them in. Loads of money flooded in, so that then massively pushed on the prices of London prices. But also what happened as well was we had the bank shift. If you read the book, it's not behind me, it's in my bedroom. If you read the book, Shoe Dog by what's his name? Phil Knight, the founder of Nike. He said today is so different. The lending, like I said, back then there wasn't VC money, venture capital money. The banks didn't lend how they lend today. Like the banks got more and more, like America invented this new world of liquidity and money into the market. America took the dollar off the pound, the dollar off the gold reserve in 1971, Nixon. He said, we're temporarily taking the money off and making it a fiat currency, which means basically it's not backed by gold. So when he done that, he said it's meant to be temporary. To this day, it's still temporary from 1971 up until this day. And then America's printed money like we've never ever had in history. So hence, this is why prices went up. Banks were being more and more competitive to lend money. We went through the banking crisis where banks was, well, in 08, they was reshuffling around these loans and just lending anybody money. So we never ever had that previously in history. But then bearing in mind, coming back to the UK and London, and by the way, I love London. I was born in London. I live 10 minutes away from London still now, so I'm just outside. I absolutely love London as a city. I don't think London's going to lose its status as a leading city. I just don't believe it's going to double every 10 years, just to get that in with everybody. But when we rewind back and we bring this into the 1980s instead of 1990s, we didn't have the internet. So when it was a business hub, you had to be in London and around different people and make sure you could jump on a tube to have these meetings, and phone calls cost a lot of money back then, so you could make phone calls, but you had to be in that business hub. But then we've slowly evolved out of that, and loads of people said, like in the Clubhouse the other day, somebody said to me, yeah, look at them 2007, all these areas grew and then they crashed. They grew because there was liquidity in the market, irresponsible lending. They grew off the back of irresponsible lending. The Northwest, so when we come out of, let's go through the history of this. We come out of the 07 crash, the whole of North was dead. London started recovering first in 2012. The bank started printing more money, quantitative easing, put more money into the economy in the housing sector anyway, in the form of Help to Buy scheme. So they put loads of liquidity into the market. London and the South started growing. So then the politicians, it started growing beyond the price per earnings ratio. So people's affordability in London was wide. So the politicians were then under massive pressure to stop overseas buyers parking money in, like Chinese buyers were buying blocks of flats and leaving them empty, just buying them as a trophy. So the government was under pressure to do that. So they come up with the powers of the North. I've covered it. I've got a webinar as well tomorrow morning if anybody's interested in that. The link to that is bit.ly/invest remotely. If you want to join me on that, I'll show some more data around this as well on that and some slides. But what happened was in 2014 or 15, I can't remember exact dates, they announced the Paris of the North deal. And they went to Manchester first. They went and put infrastructure back into Manchester. At this time, we've got a bit more internet and a bit more global markets, because we can communicate so much better and faster. We don't have to be on the train to go and have a meeting with people. We can jump on a Zoom call or what is the Microsoft version of Zoom? Somebody put it in the comments, you'll know what I mean. But we can have these meetings online. So now they went to Manchester, put the infrastructure in, it worked. And then they went to Liverpool, Leeds, and it started to spread across the whole of the North. Then we hit COVID in 2020, and everybody had to work remotely. So now that was happening anyway. We've got tech that's shifting how we work, how we live anyway. Tech shifted the way we loaned money, the way we put money into the markets. So if you look from that period when they went into Manchester, Paris of the North, all of it got realigned. Manchester since then has been the top growing on average every year. Liverpool's battled it a couple of years. Wales battled it a couple of years. Both areas where the price per earnings ratio is affordable. and infrastructure's coming in, or Wales is close to Bristol. After the lockdown, everybody's like, do you know what, go and buy a nice house in Wales and still can work in Bristol, come into the office once or twice a week. So we're shifting as humans and we're evolving. Like people say to me, look at the history. And what I say to them is, look at the history. If you look at the history of the horseshoe, there was thousands of years of blacksmiths making horseshoes. And if you come into the 19th century thinking, well, there's thousands of years of data proving that the horseshoe's great, and I'm going to put my money into a horseshoe business, you'd be out of business today. So you cannot always, the past is a great indicator, but it also shows you there is these events that really shift what happens. There was a massive event when we went from the agricultural revolution into the industrial revolution. Before then, 90% of people worked on farms. So similar again, if we went through that shift in humanity and you bet your money into farming, and then all of a sudden machines took over that with the steam engines and tractors and stuff like that, you again would be in a bad position. We're going through another like titanic, ginormous shift at the moment where we're shifting into tech and AI and the internet and the open world. So the world's flat now. It doesn't matter where you live, you can earn money online. So this is what's shifting it. And also big companies are showing up in these other areas as well. So I think it will double in certain areas over the maybe next 10 years, but then it'll cap because London is capping. London's still our main city. So what you can see, if London becomes more expensive, if other areas become more expensive than London, they won't, because people will come and live to London because it's a fantastic cultural city. The reason people live in other areas is because it's more expensive than London. And you can see this already. The average price per earnings ratio in these areas, them areas are slowing down. The Manchester's starting to slow down now with its growth. Birmingham's slowing down with its growth. And I think all areas, like London's that leading indicator. If London will double every 10 years again, from 2015, 16, it's only grown roughly, not exact figures, about 8% in that period of time. So in the next 2 or 3 years, it means it's got to grow 90%. So that means going from an average of around 600K property, it's got to grow, say 500K property for easier math, it's got to grow another 400 grand in the next 2 or 3 years on the average price. The only way you can do that is if the salaries increase. The average salary is nowhere close. There's only 5% of people that's on above £75,000 per year. So 5% of the UK pay salary above 75K per year. So if you look at them statistics, it's like, how can it grow? Unless banks start lending more than a 5 times multiplier, unless prices, no, it's not gonna, like we're looking at growth here, unless wages go up or banks, or we build tons of property. But again, if we build tons of property, it'll happen what happened in 1845, it drove the prices down. So that won't be growth, will it? So I can't see how that growth is gonna come unless salaries massively jump up. Now we've got AI coming in place where it's gonna disrupt loads of industries. We've got ChatGTP disrupting copywriters, tech people, coders, office people, disrupting that whole industry. We've now got self-driving cars coming in place. So we're going to have a massive shift and in wages and everything anyway. So my opinion is London's not going to grow, unfortunately. I think you might have moderate growth. It's had moderate growth over the last sort of 7, 8 years, but it's nowhere close to doubling. And I think that's where before London stalled, everybody was saying that was what it does in London, it ripples out across the UK afterwards. But nobody's really saying that now. And everybody's still hanging on to, yeah, London's still the capital of growth. If you looked at the statistics, few macro areas in London, on the outer skirts of London and Greater London have grown pretty well. It's because people are moving out. But in my opinion, if Greater London becomes more expensive than Central London, people will move back into Central London. So that will cap. So look, I don't know what your views are around it. Love to hear it in the comments. It is controversial. So many people push back on me on this. But look, I'm not got anything against London. I don't think London will lose its status as a leading city. I just think other cities are going to carry on growing and they will cap the same as London's done, maybe in the next 10, 15 years time. That's why I'm a remote property investor and buying in these areas or infrastructure's going in, more and more people working back in these areas. I think it's a great time to do that. If you want to learn how to do that, join me on tomorrow's workshop. The link for that is bit.ly/invest remotely. And listen, if you don't evolve your ideas, you're never going to live on your own terms. So evolve your ideas, live on your own terms, and have an amazing weekend.